it up now.
Okay.
So we can, if you go long, that's fine. We're not at the regular Comic-Con where people are, in the back of the room saying 5 minutes, we got to close for the next place. The next panel's coming on shortly. So yeah, if we go long, that's fine. If we go short, that's fine. But
Okay.
it will all be good.
Okay. Thanks.
So yeah, and we got several people in here already. So we'll wait a few more minutes and let the late people straggle in, and we'll start up in just like a minute or two.
Okay. I know IDW pushed this out on social media. I didn't know they were going to, and then they did. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And I just got a message from our friend Marv Wolfman asking if he can post his stuff on his Facebook page, because he's going to talk on Sunday at 4. So it's a little different than our 6:30 time. But
okay.
But he do you know Marv? Have you?
I don't. No, I've never encountered him.
He is probably one of the most prolific comic book writers ever. And he lives within like walking distance of my library.
No kidding.
But he's the guy that created the Teen Titans, or the new Teen Titans.
No kidding.
So the Teen Titans Go, that's all him.
No kidding.
It's all his original concept.
Yeah,
of course, they changed them, of course, now, but he loves them. He thinks they're great.
Awesome. I'll definitely tune in for that. I'll tune in. Yeah, I'm going to tune in for a lot of these. And I've had students that are tuning in for every night, they said. I've had students in class tell me they're tuning in every night.
Great.
Got some great people.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we worked hard to try to get a good lineup. So well, we've got 6:31 now. I guess I'll start the introduction, and hopefully more people come straggling in. So tonight is Thursday night. It's our 4th night of our Mission Viejo Library's virtual Comic Fest. We kind of didn't have it last year for obvious reasons, but for the last 2 years prior to that, we had wonderful Comic Fests. And our friend Kim Dwinell was a member of our first Comic Fest. She was actually the first person to respond to everything, and we love her, and I think she loves us.
Yes, finger heart.
and she was a former resident of Mission Viejo, and a Southern California girl, a surfer girl, and loves all things with the ocean. So, and is a wonderful animator, illustrator, storyteller, and just is a great person to have around. So with that, I want to let you know we have 3 prizes that we're going to give away at the end. So stick around. Let's see if I can show them to you. Let's see, participants, share screen. Which screen? Let's share this screen. So first off, we have a Ant-Man and the Wasp Mondo poster that was donated by Marvel Productions. So that's really cool. Another thing we have is a Dungeons and Dragons starter set. Tomorrow night, we're having a talk by Eamon Sheehy, who will talk about how to host and play Dungeons and Dragons online. So if you're stuck still at home for a little while longer and you want to play D&D, definitely check in tomorrow and you'll get all the insights. And the third piece is Brian Kessinger print. Brian is, if you don't know him, is a phenomenal artist, animator, illustrator, storyteller also. And this is his characters, Violet and Otto, I think, the octopus. So all 3 of those are wonderful. And if you stick around towards the end, you might have a chance to win those. And let's stop the share. And are we back?
I think we're back.
Okay. And then, of course, our friends at Creating Conversations are our partners for book sales. So if you want books from Kim, you can go to that and purchase them. And we love, to support small and independent booksellers. So definitely check that out. We'll put in the chat, hopefully a link that you guys can see. And also check the webpage for the library for the Comic Fest. You'll see links for all of our partners and all the vendors that we have, and also bios and videos of our past events. So without much other talk, I'm going to relinquish this over to our friend Kim, and she will talk about Surfside Girls and other fun things.
Hello. Well, thank you very much for having me. I was asked to come to that the Mission Viejo Comet Fest a while back, and everyone was so sweet and gracious. And I am sort of, you will understand this after my talk, I am sort of a hometown girl there at Mission Viejo, sort of, and I'll explain that later. And they're the nicest people ever. And then, and they gave me bundt cakes. And really, you give me your bundt cake and you got me for life. So really, they ask, will you come back? And I'm like, absolutely. Knowing that like, perhaps not in the year of COVID will I get a bundt cake, but there's this eternal hope that the next time we meet in person, there will be bundt cake available. So anyway, thank you so much for having me. Like they said, I am the author illustrator of the Surfside Girls graphic novel series, and I am going to screen share with you. And I'm an illustrator first, animator illustrator first, and so super visual. I figure people would like to see things that are not just me. So I'm going to screen share, and we're going to start by talking about these slides. Okay, so give me a minute. And I'm hoping that we can see my screen now. Is there some way to get a heads up on that?
It looks good.
Good. Okay. So yes, this is me. Kim Dwinell. I'm the author and illustrator of the Surfside Girls graphic novel series. My first book came out in 2017, and that's The Secret of Danger Point. The next book came out in 2019, and that's The Mystery at the Old Rancho. And sneak peek, you guys, off to the right, you see The Science of Surfing, which comes out in June. And that is different from my first two books. The first two books are mysteries. And this book here is like a companion book. It's like a field guide to the ocean. And so there will be a third mystery on the way, and I start that in fall. But at the very end of this, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into what The Science of Surfing is all about. Okay, so let's move on here. Let's see. Let me get my tools working here. All right, so what are my books about? I teach character design at Cal State Long Beach, and intro to animation as well. And I tell my students, you have to have a really quick answer when someone asks what your story's about. So this quick, I would say, Nancy Drew at the beach, sort of a tagline. And what that does is it tells people like, okay, there's going to be a strong female protagonist, with strong female protagonist friends. There's going to be mysteries. There's probably going to be danger. And then at the beach means that it's going to be set in a setting not like Nancy Drew, but at a beach somewhere. So if we dig deeper, what this is about is best friends solving supernatural mysteries in their sleepy beach town. However, like any writer of any book, those things can be just surface. There's a lot more. It's like tip of an iceberg. And down here, where all the research and what you use to craft the world, and maybe you get the tip for the story, underneath it, there's just a ton of research. And research is super fun. So there are themes in my book that might not be obvious, but they do sit under the surface. And I think any writer who writes has personal beliefs, and these beliefs come out, or these things they're interested in, they come out in their writing, whether or not you see it. A lot of times you'll see authors talking a lot about, their character going and getting coffee. Well, obviously, because anyone who writes and has to hit deadlines is drinking some coffee. And it's funny, like watch for that. You'll see that in adult books a lot. Okay, so let's move on here. Little bit about me. So I say I'm sort of a local girl, and you can see here, I lifeguarded at Laguna Beach and also Lake Mission Viejo during college. I did graduate with a BFA in illustration from Cal State Fullerton. Go Titans. And then after college, I was really lucky. I spent about a year trying to find animation classes because my illustration degree got me part of the way, but we did not have animation at the Cal States yet. So I kind of had to paste together a bit of an education. And luckily the Lion King was just hitting, like animation, 2D animation was booming, and this was my dream, and I got sucked up into animation. So I worked on quite a few films, and we'll see that in the next slide. But then after that, it was sort of time to shift gears, have a baby and slow down a little bit. So I got an offer to teach animation at Cal State Fullerton, one of the first times they were teaching animation there in their entertainment arts program, and also at Laguna College of Art and Design. So I I had a great time teaching. And then there were a couple of years I took some time off. I dabbled in landscape design. I raised a little guy. And during that time, I was with my little guy at the Borders when there used to be Borders. And I was getting my coffee and he was getting his blueberry muffin, and we were roaming the aisles. And I found this book called Blankets by Craig Thompson. And like, sky parted. Oh, like this is an animated film in a book. It's 400 pages of drawings. This is not like Spider-Man, and nothing against Spider-Man because I like him too, but this is a full story. And I thought, I know what I want to do with my life. So I actually went back to school at Cal State Fullerton to get an MFA. They did have a graphic novel class, and they do. So that's sort of past. And now I teach animation and animation related classes at Cal State Long Beach, and I write and illustrate graphic novels. So I've got the Surfside Girls series that we're talking about today. And I'm slowly working on a new project that's not really announced yet. And right now I'm calling it Honeybee Hollow. That's for a bit of a younger crowd. So here are some of the films I've worked on. Like I said, I got hired right out of school onto The Swan Princess. So I was driving from, you ready, Laguna Hills to Burbank to work on my first film. From there, I got hired onto Cats Don't Dance. And when that Turner kind of went under, got absorbed by Warner Brothers, I fled and went over to Disney, and I got sucked up onto their Crunch and Hercules. And I spent the next few films at Disney. From Hercules, I got put onto a project called The Kingdom of the Sun, and that turned into Emperor's New Groove. But as we know, there were story problems with that. Like it shifted quite a bit. During the time I was on Kingdom of the Sun, though, we were going to museums in LA and you know, with the people with the white gloves and looking at pre-Columbian Incan artifacts and drawing from them. So, you know, I'm going to talk about what animation taught me, but it was really powerful to be, you know, in the presence of these things, knowing that we're crafting a film that's animated and silly, but still grounded in this reality. So anyway, while they were working out story problems, they loaned me to Mulan. I went to Florida for Mulan and came back and got loaned to Tarzan. And that's about the time that I, during Tarzan is when I left animation. So what did animation teach me? Animation taught me how to get this graphic novel thing done. It taught me about story and the importance of story and how everything serves story. It taught me drawing discipline, sitting in the chair, getting the drawings done. It taught me how to draw characters over and over on model, because this is what you do in a graphic novel. You know, you've got panel and panel, and they have to look the same panel to panel. And also research. The amount of research that goes on at Disney for a film is incredible. Like on Mulan, they sent people to China. They drew and they sketched and they took photos and absorbed culture and brought a lot of this back and put it on the walls, and you really felt surrounded by it. And you know, it's a cartoon, yes, but there's so much foundation, like I said, the underneath part of the iceberg that goes on with any of this stuff, you know. And I know people who will say like, oh, how cute, like a movie for kids. And I cringe a bit because there's, you know, this is serious professional stuff and a lot of research, and I want to do it properly. So anyway, like I said, graphic novels are like an animated film in a book. So I took all of this knowledge and decided like, okay, I'm going to do this. Next slide. Hang on. Sorry. A little more about me. Because we're talking about using research to make your story authentic. And part of what I feel is important as a writer is to write like what I'm very familiar with. And what I'm very familiar with is that Pacific Ocean. And there's been a bit of a love affair with me in the Pacific Ocean for a long time. And you can see there's my boat, and then that's me surfing with my son down at Doheny, and that's me on the Jeep in my lifeguarding days. So there were some years where I was in that ocean every single day, and you know, would pride myself in feeling the temperature drop 1 degree, or like, you know, the phenomena that happens in the ocean anytime you're someplace that often. All of that I try to put into my books. So that's sort of bottom of the iceberg there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this story building and the research that goes into this. Reality intersecting with the supernatural. My favorite stories are the ones where we find out that there's a hidden world alongside of our own. And I think honestly, I think that we as humans want to know that there's more. I think we have this gut sense that there's more. We want to believe that the old stories are true. We want to know that myths have some basis in reality, like Bigfoot. Maybe he doesn't walk today, but he walked 10 years ago, or maybe in the 70s, or maybe in the 1800s. Aliens, we want to know aliens exist. Like the X-Files was so popular, right? Because there's this draw to that other. Fairies, angels, and demigods walking among us. Doesn't this sound way more exciting than what we read in the paper and what goes on the news every night? So these are my favorite types of stories, reality with alternate reality in the same book, and this is what I do. So let's see some examples that are not mine. Okay, I'm sure everyone has read Percy Jackson. I love Percy Jackson. And Rick Riordan there, I don't know if it's Riordan or Riordan, but so pardon me, Ricky. But he crafted this amazing world, right? And so what do we know? What did he have to know about his real world? This story is set in New York, okay? So we have Percy, who's a boy who lives in New York. New York is gritty, New York is noisy, New York goes all the time. He goes to school in New York, and Rick would have to know how that looks. That does not look like our California schools with giant lawns and big trees and one-story buildings with big courtyards. So Percy would go to these schools that are, 3 stories, maybe with the basketball court on the roof. He had a hard family life and he didn't fit in. So instantly we have this gritty world that's going on, and we relate to Percy because we've all been in that situation where, we're not fitting in and maybe stuff's not going so well at home. And so there's our in, there's how we relate. But bam, there's the other world, gods, demigods. He has powers. Other people have powers. There's magic. And not just that, but big things are at stake. Like Olympus is above New York, and things are going down. So he gets to move back and forth between this gritty world that we understand and this fantastic world that I think we would all like to inhabit. Here's another one, and you may think I'm silly. I loved Twilight. I think Stephenie Meyer is brilliant. So here's what this woman built. She built the real world, Arizona and the Valley of the Sun. And when she writes Arizona, you get the heat and the dry wind and the suburban sprawl. You get all that. In this book, there's baseball, America's sport. And then she had to go, there's another environment she brought into this, Forks in the Pacific Northwest, this dramatic change that Bella goes through. She goes from like the driest, hottest place that she can be to the wettest, gloomiest place that she can be, this Pacific Northwest that drips water, that ferns and green and like a whole different situation. She also had to do a lot of research about Native Americans and reservations. How does that work? Do Native American kids go to the schools that everyone goes to, or do they have their own schools? How does that work? Like, I would have to go research that. And I'm sure that any writer who writes something so that we feel so strongly has gone and smelled and felt and been in the situation where she can absorb all of this and then put it into the writing. And she also would have had to do a lot of research on sheriffs and police work and procedure and that sort of thing. So all of this is the world that we can slip into the story through this world. We can relate to baseball and policemen, all that's mundane, but then bam, there's another world. And in this world, there are vampires, and the Native American mythology is true. I absolutely love what she did when she had Bella research the cold ones and how vampires are interpreted through all of these cultures across humanity for millennia, like looking through old books and finding these stories and researching online and finding these stories. So she wove beautifully historical past and mythology into this mundane reality, right? And then we all know werewolves. So brilliant meshing of mundane world and the supernatural world in a way that I think really resonated with me. That she was very inspirational to me while I was conceiving of Surfside Girls. Let's see who's next. So what kind of research have I done for Surfside Girls? Let's take a little time out and talk about the Golden State, California, the Golden State. So I say I'm sort of a local girl, but I was a Marine brat. My dad came to Tustin Air Base to fly helicopters. And we had been in a bunch of different homes before we landed in California in 1972 or so. And my parents were fortunate enough to buy a house in Mission Viejo then. But we didn't stay very long. We stayed for a couple of years and we were gone. And for whatever reason, California, the Golden State, like it planted its roots in me. And there's a little seed in my little blonde brain that said, this is home. This is home. And so anywhere we were in Japan, we were in Florida, wherever we were, I always knew that we were going to come back to this place. And I don't think it's all me. I think the state has a mythic quality anyway. I mean, people go west and they go west in order to like find something better. Whether it was gold or Hollywood or surfing, like whatever it is, you go west. You don't go west because you failed. You go west because there's hope. It's the leftmost area of our country. You can't go any farther unless you jump in the ocean and paddle. So through my research on the state of California, which I made a character in my books, I felt really strongly that this land, this eternal land, has a voice. And so I tried to pay attention to that. Through my research, I stayed really open and I let history and land guide my storytelling. History is fascinating. And as you're going to find out, if you don't already know, the history of California is super fascinating. I know that you people who went to 4th grade in California learned a lot of this, but I did 4th grade in Pensacola, Florida. So I did not get all this. Okay, so in book 1, The Secret of Danger Point, this was me conceiving this world. And California as a character was a very loud voice. So what I decided was I was going to mash up this fictional town of Surfside with some things that I knew and loved. I loved Laguna. I loved San Clemente. I did a lot of surfing at Churches and Trestles, Upper Trestles and Cotton's Point when I was young. And then Seal Beach Main Street, where I live in Long Beach now, and going down to Seal Beach Main Street feels like a blast from the past with all the little shops and the trees. So I decided that if I was going to make my own world, it would have elements of all of those towns in it, and that would become my Surfside. So this land, and especially the land in Surfside, I try to push this land is eternal. Like many groups have come through California and made it into different things, and the land just stays. It remains, and we come and go, but it remains. So we're going to look into some of these stories. Let me just show you this slide. You can see in my research, like in my painting, Laguna Beach. This is probably down at like Rock Pile, where you've got stairs going down to the beach like this. Some places in South Laguna too. So here's Seal Beach Main Street. So you can see there's my girls undercover with their ice creams, and you can see like direct reference taken from Seal Beach Main Street. Okay, I populated my danger point, the supernatural world. Sam swims through a cave, and when she comes up and goes up onto the cliff, all of a sudden she's in a supernatural world. She can see ghosts. And I was really, I really had to think about these ghosts. So who am I populating my cliff with? And I thought, who was here? Who was here was Native Americans, vaqueros. I wrote pirates, and we're going to talk about that, okay? And then Mr. Wu is Asian American. He, in my story, is Chinese American. So we're going to find out how all those people got here. And let's start here. When I started researching this and decided that the very first people who are going to inhabit this cliff, which Danger Point as I built it is just a really lovely place. And some of the people who have passed away in the past, they think, I don't want to leave yet. So they just stay. Like, why not? And they know they can cross over at some point in time, but the ones that are on the cliff right now are just hanging out. And and so when I started researching, I thought these were Chumash people because that's what I had seen in Santa Barbara. Um, and when I did my research, and let me tell you, sadly, it was hard to find information. And I know that's because there aren't a lot of Tongvas left. I learned that this tribe was right here was called Tongva. So I wanted to make sure that what I did made even though this is a fictional town, that I had some historical accuracy and was trying to honor the people that were here. So my son was in fourth grade, and his teacher had these photos, and I was compiling information, and I thought, oh my gosh, like can I grab these and Xerox them? So I Xeroxed these photos um, of what Native Americans in our very, very hyper local area would wear. Um, so the next thing I did was I went to Rancho Los Cerritos, and I'm gonna. I could be like a salesperson for the ranchos. Like the ranchos are amazing places, but I made an appointment. I sat with a historian, and I went through books of drawings that people had done, looking at paintings and hearing stories of describing the rancho period and what clothing they wore, the different peoples that were around in the rancho period, what clothing they wore. They also had Native American information, and I was able to sketch that too, and got a lot of information from the rancho historian. So in my research, very strange things started to happen, and I discovered, and I dug and dug and dug, but I realized that um, what the main village for the Tongva was right there on my campus, what is now Cal State Long Beach. So here I am teaching on this ground that I didn't know, like layers of an onion, went so deep and had these people literally right here. And I thought, there was something amazing and fulfilling about that, like knowing I feel like I'm on the right, I feel like I'm on the right path. But then it got weird. So just after I found this out, I'm teaching a night class at Cal State Long Beach. I'm teaching this 6-hour animation class that goes at night. And I hear drums. I hear like Native American drums. And I thought, oh, I'm going crazy. So I asked my class to be quiet, and I said, am I the only one hearing drumming? And they said no. And so I said, pick up your backpacks. We're locking the classroom, and we're going to go find the drums. So we went and scuttled around campus, and we found that there was a drum circle going on with the Native American Studies class. Wow, like chills went through me because I thought, what are the odds that I'm thick into research on this? Okay, that's my first weird story. Second weird story is there's an area of Cal State Long Beach that goes along Bellflower that the Native Americans will not allow the university to develop, and rightly so. It's called Pavagna, and it's this area, it's a large area, and it's got these oak trees, and the oak trees have prayer flags on them. And so shortly after this drumming incident, I thought, I'm gonna go walk among the oaks and just, again, feel the history that's in this, because I want to pour all of this in my book. Even if you just see a cartoon picture of a Native American, you don't know how much has gone into that. But this is for me. This is what I need to do for the bottom of the iceberg. So I'm walking around Pavagna, and I'm going from oak tree to oak tree, deeper and deeper in. And I look down and I see a paw print, and I thought, I wonder if people take their dogs in here. And I looked up, and there, 30 feet in front of me, are 2 coyotes, middle of the day, staring at me. And I got the sense that they were guardians. It was really interesting. So I wasn't sure. I don't think I should have, I wasn't scared, but I thought, maybe I should just kind of back out of this. So I slowly backed away, looked at the other oak tree with the shell offerings around it and the prayer flags. I backed away a little bit more. And when I looked up, they were still there, but one of them was laying down and one of them was taking a poop. So I figured, okay, I think I passed. I think we're all okay. I'm just going to leave now, but thank you very much. And so those sorts of things really affected me in how I approached setting up this book. So anyway, Rancho period, very cool what I learned at the Rancho. So we're filing that away for later. All right, at Rancho Los Cerritos, talking to the historian, I said that I'd like to put pirates in my book because pirates are cute. And he said, did you know that we had a pirate? And I did not. Did you know that we had a pirate? We had a pirate here in Southern California. His name was Hippolyte Bouchard, French-born Argentinian pirate. So he and his men actually attacked and raised the Argentine flag over Monterey, California, which was then part of Spain. But they held Argentina held Monterey for 6 days in California. So actually part of our state became Argentina for 6 days. Then he came south and he plundered Mission San Juan Capistrano, burned things, pirates, havoc. But think about it. Think about, like, this has got to be a movie someday. Pirates, vaqueros, Native Americans, all kind of shaking it up there in our Southland. I think this is the most amazing story. And these are the sorts of things that when you just show up and open yourself up to history, like, this just feeds in. So now I can officially say there is a reason to have pirates on Danger Point, and that's because of Hippolyte Bouchard. He is actually seen as a hero and a patriot in Argentina to this day. All right, Asian Americans in California. I knew Mr. Wu. I wanted a caretaker of Danger Point who was going to pass the torch to the girls. And I wanted him to be Asian. And I was looking for, like, where's the connection? And Asians have a lot of history here in California. Mr. Wu needed backstory. Railroad workers, Chinese railroad workers, did really dangerous work with dynamite, helping bring the railroad to California. There were laundries and restaurants in San Francisco. And actually here on Terminal Island in Long Beach, there was a fishing village. And so looking through all of this, I decided, I think his backstory is going to be that he saved the head of the railroad from some very dangerous thing that happened with dynamite. And as a result, he got gifted this land that he's the caretaker of. And that was my backstory. Again, no one really knows this. That a little of that comes out in the book, but a lot of this research is for me. You can see the 2 Native American kiddos that follow through the book too, on the left here, and they're playing with Jade's ponytail. Okay, so this cast of characters continues in book 2. This is the book that came out in 2019. And so I had pitched my editor a story, and my editor's a very good editor. And he said, absolutely not. This is a horrific story and you should never speak of it again. And I was devastated, but I'm like, I got more stories. And he said, you've built this beautiful world in Surfside, dig into your California history. So I went back to the ranchos. This time I went to Rancho Los Alamitos, which is on Cal State Long Beach, like right next to Cal State Long Beach campus. Cal State Long Beach property used to be part of the rancho. So again, onion skin, like I'm standing on this ground teaching animation that was a rancho, that was, a Native American city. And all of this is under me and in me. And so anyway, I took a tour with a historian at that rancho, took a lot of pictures, learned a lot of things. Then I went to Heritage Hill in Lake Forest. I took a lot of photos there, and I really tried to keep my mind open for historical details that would spark stories or flavor for the book. Here's a really bad picture of the rancho's map. This was from Heritage Hill, and it's in a barn, and there was a light on it, and I could not get that light. But these were gigantic plots of land, and they were gifted to Spanish soldiers. They were given these enormous plots of land. So that's just backstory. So using reference from all of these ranchos, I designed Surfside Rancho, which plays a central part in book 2. So you can see there's our crew coming in from the left, and I've got the rancho house and the cowboy car, the vaqueros casitas, and the old barn. And this is in Surfside. So my field trip here, I took a bunch of photos. So you can look at this porch, this deep porch, and you can look at the rancho house there at Heritage Hill. And this is Rancho Los Cerritos. So this is the entry from the parking lot. And you can see how all of this sort of figures into my story. So in my story, the rancho house has fallen into disrepair. There isn't money and funding to keep it up. And that's going to help the girls, with their story, with bringing the rancho back where it needs to be. More photos at Heritage Hill there in Lake Forest. Look at the beautiful dark wood and the dark furniture that I think is called Monterey style. The beautiful colors in the flooring. And you can see how I brought that into, this is when they've actually broken into the rancho property because they're looking for clues. and it's sunset, and you can see this rancho's in disrepair, but the dark porch and the floor all comes from that research. Here's the front of it. They are with Maria, who is the Mexican ghost who actually used to live in this rancho. She was sort of the little princess of the rancho, and she's highly, highly dramatic. And she's what brings us into this story. So when we went into the rancho, I took pictures of the inside of this house as well. And you can see the dark beams, the dark framing of the doorways. And in my book, the girls and Maria go in, and there's docents there. You can see that I've used the ceiling and the same flooring and that dark wood in the furniture, the gold in the frames. More pictures of my research. You'll see this beautiful dress and shawl in the corner. And I needed a reason for the girls to distract the docents and ask some questions about something. And it was looking at this picture that made me decide that it would be a shawl. So here they are coming into the rancho. You can see you can see those bullhorns, some of the weavings I took all from the research that I did. There's Maria, incidentally, sitting in the chair, just feeling right at home in the place that she used to live. Okay, another thing I researched for this book. 2 years before the mast, Richard Henry Dana of Dana Point, you know who Dana Point is named after. And let me tell you, I learned so much from this book, and it's again, just super fascinating. I think someday I'm going to do a nonfiction book about early California. So I wanted to learn about how ships came through. And, you know, they had to make that dangerous journey around Cape Horn. So if the Yankees wanted to trade with Spain or Mexico, whatever it was at that time, they had to leave Boston. They had to go all the way around South America and come up the coast. And this is how Hippolyte Bouchard came too. So what I learned is that San Diego, this big natural port, had this variety of cultures living together in these hide houses, like houses built of hide, like tents basically, because they were tanning hides that they would get from the cattle. And that was the big export. All these people, we're talking French and Russians, Hawaiians, they were called Sandwich Islanders, people from Tonga, people from Java, Native Americans from Peru, Native Americans from California. All of these people were mixing it up and hanging at night at the beach, tanning hides, playing guitars, you know, probably drinking beer, I don't know. But I have to tell you this story I found out in this book about the oven. So apparently at some point in time, the Russians had built this giant bread oven on the beach in San Diego, and it had a hole in the top, you know, and they would, I don't know what a bread oven looks like, but it was a giant structure for baking bread. And they abandoned the structure, and who moves into it but the Hawaiians? So the Hawaiians who would tan the hides were living in a Russian bread oven on the beach in San Diego. And I think to myself, you could try to write fiction like this and people just wouldn't believe you. They think that's preposterous, but that's history. So anyway, during this period of California history, California belonged to Mexico and Spanish was the main language spoken for trade. So all of these people who were mixing it up on the beaches were speaking Spanish. And I thought that was really fascinating. And so at one point in time in this book, Maria takes Sam and Jade and she holds their hands while they're at the rancho outside. And when she holds their hands, they are transported back to what the rancho looked like in her day. And I thought, like, what a wonderful thing to be able to go back and see this. But this is how she wanted the girls to see that her life was. And you can see the ships anchored offshore that would be waiting for the hides that they would be selling. Now, looking for clues, the girls jump on a bus and they head to a mission. Okay, they need to find information for this mystery they're solving about this rancho. So in order to find information, they said, who would tend to someone who had been gravely injured? Where would they go? There weren't hospitals in the day. So they would have taken them to a mission. So the girls decide they're going to jump on the bus. They're going to go to the mission. And you probably know this is Mission San Juan Capistrano, but in the book I call it Mission San Simon because that's where my little sister lives with her family. That's their street name. And I put it in as an Easter egg to my nieces. So here's more pictures. I went with my mom on a field trip and We had the docents take us around and tell us the stories of how life was at the mission. Really, really interesting facts. Here's part of the crumbling. And, the crumbling, that people would pillage the mission for stones and build structures from the things they took from the missions when the missions fell into disrepair. So here you see the girls, Sam and Jade, have gotten off the bus and they're going through that little archway that you go through to go to Mission San Juan Capistrano, and they buy their tickets. And I've kind of meshed those photos together to show you the mission and also the crumbly bit in the back. Here are those quintessential mission arches leading down to some dark doors. And see how the lintels work over the top of the doorways. So I've put that into the story too here. The girls are on a tour and they're not super thrilled. It's an audio tour and they're going to go explore. So they're going to go down that hallway. And in the chapel, I was like blown away how gorgeous the decoration on the ceilings, and then also here on the walls, like this gorgeous paint. I knew that had to make it into my book. So as the girls go in the doors and they see the Padre here, who may or may not be in the land of the living, he takes them around to show them some information that they're looking for. And you can see that I've put the painting on the walls and also the chandeliers and the painting on the ceiling. I went into a room that had a lot of books that was sort of like a library in the mission. And I loved this little bookshelf and I loved these old books. And you can see the bookshelf there in the third panel. You can see the painting on the walls going down the halls. And then going out the door here, look at that picture, the last panel. There's a door out of the chapel that goes to a graveyard. And that really affected me. When I walked through that door and kind of wandered in the graveyard there, the light hit just right. And I was again feeling that sense of like the timelessness of California and how beautiful it is. And I really, really hope to push all of that in my story. So when I made the Molina, the clue, this headstone, I put it in this garden and I put a graveyard angel in as well. So while I was in this library area, I actually found a list of Native American names, like the children's names that they had taken in. And I actually was able to name my two boys and then also their rabbit, Tuvit, and Tuvit is rabbit in Tongva. So I was really happy that I was able to incorporate a little bit of that, even though no one would ever know. It makes me happy. So here in my book, these are some of my favorite pages where they're in there with the Padre and he's helping them find books, and he's telling them all these fascinating, or they're looking through the books, they're finding all these fascinating facts about California. For instance, this is 1663. When sailors, the Spanish sailors landed in Baja California, it's a very long peninsula and they thought it was an island. And the island of California was on maps for a very long time. And, there's a bit of a fable that plays into this as I did my research. The Spaniards living across the water from Africa, these stories would blow across of this land called Calafia, where this queen lived with her band of women warriors. Like, what a fabulous tale. And she had griffins as her minions, and she had an octopus shield, and she lived in this island of flowers. And so when the Spanish landed and thought they found this island, they called it California. Again, how much do we love our state? Okay, so a sneak peek here of what's coming. Book 3 is very different. This is not something I researched for story. This is something I researched actually for it being a field guide. I love the ocean so much, and I thought I want to share the knowledge I have of like how moons affect the ocean, how king tides and swells affect your surfing, what's the best tide for your beach, and what creatures are you going to see, and what is the kelp called? All of these things I love so much. I asked my editor if I could do a book that was a companion book, a field guide. And so you're going to see a little bitty sneak peek here. So like I said, tons of research. And like I was saying to Jeff earlier, I was starting this book when COVID hit. And it was really great because I was so deep into this wonderful research about dolphins and bioluminescence, and it really gave me a place for my brain to sit while those early days of COVID, we were all so scared, and it gave me a place to focus. And so I'm really grateful I had this book. Here's some things that you're going to see in the book. Here's one page about bait balls. And if you don't know what a bait ball is, you've got these sea creatures, herd bait fish, and they wind them up, and the bait fish, not the brightest. They wind up tighter and tighter and tighter in a ball because they think if I'm in the middle, I'm not going to get eaten. And they wind up and they wind up and they make this moving flock of fish. It's fascinating to watch. And they're herded to the surface. And all these predators come together, the dolphins, the tuna, the sharks, the seals, they all herd the fish. And they force it to the surface. And once it erupts, the diving birds come down, the seagulls, the pelicans come down, they eat these fish. And I'll tell you, I was in a fish boil like this. I was out surfing at Bolsa Chica with my friend Surf Mom Lisa, and we're sitting out there. And all of a sudden, the water erupts, and we don't know what's going on, but it erupts, and there's pelicans diving everywhere. And you actually see a little bit of this in book 1 when Sam's dreaming. You see this ocean erupt like this. But it lasted about 15 or 20 seconds, and then it was gone. And we thought, whoa, what was that? So I'm particularly fascinated with bait balls. Here's another page from the book. This is in the biology section as well, where we see sea otters, and Jade is trying to convince us that they are actually the cutest animal on the planet. Here's a little bit more. In the biology section, I have a section on the kelp forest and some of the creatures that dwell in the kelp forest. And if you spend any time in Laguna or off the coast of Crystal Cove, or that area down there is a sanctuary, and you can go dive in the kelp, and it's gorgeous. It's like the redwoods, they're beautiful, and they go all the way down. And I remember being a lifeguard in Laguna, and we would go for morning workouts, and you could see all the way to the bottom and see the leopard sharks and the Garibaldi. And I just thought myself, like, this is heaven on earth. This is so beautiful. And so I'm very fortunate that I have these experiences stored that I can push into my books. One last thing here, and this is bioluminescence. I don't know if anyone caught that last spring, but when there's a red tide, there's this bloom of this algae bloom, and it stinks like cabbage. But when you go down there at night, it glows. And so your footprints glow if you run. Like if you see dolphins go through, bam, like you've got magical glowing dolphins. So in conclusion, history is full of stories that you can't even imagine. Like I said, if you made them up, no one would believe you. Who would believe Hawaiians living in a bread oven, or that Monterey was actually Argentina? So do make it a point to learn your super local history. It's cool to find out why streets are named what they are. It's often people from local history. And historians at the Rancho can't wait for a visit. They are full of knowledge and looking for you to come hear what they have to say. And lastly, if you craft a story that has a supernatural side, use the interesting facts that you learn through research to help your readers relate to the characters, and then tie your supernatural world to it. And that is the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so I guess if you can.
Do I stop screen sharing?
Yeah, I think you can try that.
Okay.
And then we can get to the prizes.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kim. That was wonderful. And then the history is amazing, because and of course, if you want to find out more about the ranchos and the natives and Native Americans and pirates and Mission San Juan, we have tons and tons of books at my library too. And so come by and check those out. So Kim, if you want to pick numbers between 3 numbers between 1 and 20.
3 numbers between 1 and 20?
Yes.
Okay, let's go with 8, 11, and 17.
8, 11.
I see too that there's a question. I don't know how to get to
There
that.
is a question. While I'm finding it out, the question is, I love animation. If I want a job in animation, is it all computers now, or is it art? I guess mean hand drawn.
No, I think this is actually a really good time for animation. I think if you saw Wolfwalkers come out, that's all traditionally done animation. That was done in Ireland. That was on Apple Plus. And a lot of like storyboarding, a lot of the traditional things that you think of when you think of animation that you do by hand are still done here. Character design, a lot of pre-production, storyboarding. And while a lot of animation is computer generated animation, I think there's a lot of space for, like, I have a lot of students that do commissions of GIF animation. There's video games where, you know, I think there's more areas to do animation now. And it's booming, especially right now during the pandemic when studios can't shoot. They're very thrilled to have animation jobs. So I would say continue. Cal State Fullerton and Cal State Long Beach both have very good programs locally here in the area.
Great, great. So for the prizes, let's see. The first person who will win the Ant-Man and the Wasp will be Donna Latrice. So I know I probably Latrice is the Donna gets the Ant-Man. So congratulations. Make sure I get the notes so we won't get them all mixed up. The Dungeons and Dragons kit will go to let's see, Leela Bernstein. So she will get the Dungeons and Dragons kit. And then finally, the Brian Kessinger drawings will go to Cynthia Swanson. So, Brian.
Awesome.
So congratulations, everybody. Yes, Kim.
I see another question here.
Oh.
So I'm just looking at them popping up. Any advice on creating a visual aesthetic for your story? I would say that color palette controls a lot. Like when I paint, everything that's blue is cerulean blue. That goes down first, and everything that's land or skin is yellow ochre light. So I feel like those are the basic colors of California, and I put them down first and I build out of that. My new series has a different palette and a very different feel. So I think establishing a color palette first really helps me visually. And then I see, do you start with story or sketches? And I would have to say a little of both. I think and draw, and then the drawings make me think more, and then I notes, and then more drawing. The way it works with my editor is that it's a pitch, it's an outline, it's a script, it's thumbnails, it's pencils, and then it's paint. So that's the order we go in. But to develop, I'm so visual, I'm moving back and forth between both. And I see, do you plan to continue the stories after this last book? There will definitely be a third mystery, and I'll start that in fall. I keep your fingers crossed for me. I have to pitch that to my editor, and hopefully he likes it, because when he doesn't like it, he's very clear that he doesn't like it.
Okay, and hopefully I've sent out a chat to everybody for the winners to email libraryprograms@cityofmissionviejo.org. I hope that's the right email. I'm pretty sure it is. So please email us, and we'll let you know how you can retrieve the prizes. Come by the library, or we can send them to you if you don't live locally. So any other questions were there? I guess not, though.
That's all I see.
Well, so like I mentioned at the beginning, tomorrow night we'll have our friend Eamon Sheehy talk about Dungeons and Dragons. And then Saturday will be fun. We'll have two novelists coming in to talk about their books, Gretchen McNeil and a new one that was a Star Wars author. So that'll be awesome. Let me pull it up.
I'll definitely be tuning in for a lot of these. I really enjoyed last night's presentation.
Right. Oh, Gretchen McNeil and Zarita Cordova are actually talking Sunday evening. And then Saturday night is Brian Kessinger. So,
okay.
So we got 4 more good programs. So definitely check that out. So
awesome.
And without that, I don't think there's much else to say, is there?
Thank you very much for having me, and take care. Stay safe, everybody.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Good night, guys.
Bye.